Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel.
Jim Brownlow of Muskego is a Democratic candidate in the 83rd Assembly District. Jim, welcome back to WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you very much.
Your campaign website has something I find intriguing, campaign finance. You say only someone who lives in the district who could vote for you should be allowed to donate, no corporate donations. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk about that. I probably have to change that a little bit because, you know, I'm running for the state assembly, and there are people in the state. Well, example, I've gotten a donation from the Wisconsin Education Association Council PAC,
yeah,
because I've been a member of WEAC for 40 years, I guess, and so they have interests in what I would do in the legislature. So I think I would. I'm confident, and I'm not at all embarrassed about taking money from my fellow professional teachers.
Right. But you believe in campaign finance reform, so you want to talk about it broadly and why you think it's needed?
Well, yeah, especially there shouldn't be any money coming into Wisconsin from out of state. I mean,
okay.
For example, the NRA money, we found out recently from news reports that the Russians have actually been financing the NRA, the National Rifle Association, and of course, many of the Republican candidates and the Republican Party of Wisconsin has accepted money from the National Rifle Association, and this is money from international corporations that maybe, what do I say? Their corporate headquarters might be in Belgium or someplace, and they don't have the interests of Wisconsin at heart. So let's get money from people, the people who actually vote in our state.
Well, or the corporate headquarters might be in Taiwan, which leads me to Foxconn, and we're a few miles from the proposed Foxconn campus. How would you have voted on the Foxconn tax breaks, tax incentives?
Yeah, I would definitely have voted against that. You know, I had the experience of driving over here, and of course, with all the construction in between Muskego and this location, I had to drive through. I took a long drive, and right past the site of Foxconn, and so I know it's fairly close to Muskego where I live. And who knows, maybe some of the people in Muskego could use jobs, but you know, it's not really what we want. We have thriving communities. You know, Muskego is a medium-sized city, and we've got the village of Hales Corners and so on in the district, and Big Bend. The people in my district don't want their children going to the big city and working in a factory. They want economic development so that they can thrive and take opportunities in their own communities.
Kimberly Clark, though, asked for some of the same tax breaks, and they're a homegrown business. Grew up in Wisconsin. Would you have also voted against the Kimberly Clark tax breaks?
Well, that would be hard because we have already given money to the Taiwan Corporation, but I would still be in principle against that sort of thing, just on the idea that the government should, I'm going to sound like a Republican now, the government should not be picking winners and losers. We can in Wisconsin, we can form laws that provide economic development, a stimulus to create jobs, but that can apply equally all over the state, and that's what we really want. We want the communities in the 83rd Assembly District and the ones way up north to be thriving and keeping their young people in their communities. With
your history in schools and interests like that, your whole career, my question is, the current budget included more than $600 million more for K-12 public schools. Do we need a similar increase of that size in the next budget? Are schools underfunded?
Yeah, schools are underfunded. I mean, the statistics show this, that I can't remember what you call them, the improvements to school funding,
yeah,
enhancements, still do not come up to the level of what school funding was way back in 2010 before the current governor was elected. So that we need to get back to that level. Plus, I would follow the lead of candidate Tony Evers to increase funding, especially. I like his emphasis on special ed students, because that's a very good example of the way the state has not been funding the needs of some of our children, the people who need it the most. And we have been so far behind it. Now we need a big increase, and it's going to benefit everybody. As you said, I worked in schools a long, long time, so I know that if the needs of the special ed students are not being taken care of, then it causes lesser education for all of the students, whether they're extremely well-abled or average-abled or whatever they are.
Vouchers and choice have grown, started Milwaukee, Racine, and now statewide. Your position on the choice program?
Well, we know the answer on this, because the voucher program, I think, is 26 years old now. So we've done this experiment. We've found out voucher schools are no better than public schools. I mean, study after study shows us this. And we know, or I know, and I hope everybody knows, that we really can't afford two competing school systems paid for by the taxpayers, and that's the problem. Actually, in the communities and the school districts in the 83rd, voucher students are getting more state aid than the public school students are, and that certainly was never meant to be the case, and I would not support. The program has proven to be not worth the investment that we've made, and it's harming our public schools, and most of the people, and I'm very confident that the voters in the 83rd Assembly District believe in their public schools and want them to be healthy, and they want them to provide opportunities so that our children are prepared for the future.
How would you like the impasse, the gridlock in the Capitol on how we pay for highways in the future to be broken? What's a fair way to pay for our highway system in the future?
Well, we can afford to have a very good infrastructure system, and I mean, we're talking highways here, but we're also talking about high-speed internet, and we're talking public transportation. We can afford a great system that allows people to physically move here and there, move goods to market, and also gives people the opportunity to work at home through high-speed internet. These are all connected. They're all things that the state should be doing. We have plenty of money. We know that we spend a lot every year, so there are ways to do it. And I know that the way to do it is not to borrow money so that the children and grandchildren are paying for the roads that we're using now.
Could you vote to raise the gas tax?
I would, if it was part of a whole re-look at what are our priorities. How do we solve the problems of getting goods to market, getting people here and there, which includes public transportation and ways of working in different ways than we have been.
Tolling has been mentioned in the Capitol. Your position?
I don't think tolling makes any sense. It's it's like 20th century. It's actually more like 19th century probably. Muskego, the first road that went through Muskego, Janesville Road, was a toll road. So I think that's an idea whose time has come and gone a long time, and nobody likes tolls that I know of. So I would be very reluctant to support tolls.
Local governments have been living with levy limits for 14 years. Some local government leaders say it hurts their ability to provide local services. Should we keep levy limits to control property taxes, loosen them, or get rid of them?
Well, I think the voters have spoken on this. It's very similar to the situation in schools, where I think schools have been kind of operating under revenue limits since 1993, I think, so even longer. So, but the voters step up if the schools. We've just had a big building plan in Muskego. We have a brand new middle school. It's terrific. It's what we want. It's a great place for our kids to go to. We've remodeled several elementary schools. So the voters have spoken. The limits that we put on local governments are too strict. They haven't been adjusted. It's a very easy thing to put limits on that, but then you are passing the buck to the local governments to solve problems which are actually impossible to solve, so they have to go to the voters and ask for a referenda, which they do, and the voters agree with them. So we need to raise those revenue limits and school aids. And it's just the way we do things in Wisconsin. We always have. We've seen a need, and we've provided the funds to make our communities better. And we live in a terrific place. I mean, the 83rd Assembly District is a great place to live and work and to retire. And it's just an example of that Wisconsin knows how to do this, but we've kind of forgotten. You know, we've been under this reign of error by the Republicans for the last 8 years, and they know very well how to win elections, but they don't know how to govern. And this is an example. This is what we were talking about with the transportation funds. They don't know what to do. The only thing they can do is put it on the credit card and have somebody else solve the problem and pay for it. And it's the same with our local governments and school districts. They have to solve all the problems that the state government, frankly, is causing them. So I would love to work in Madison to get all levels of government well-funded, able to solve the problems that they can solve best at the local level.
You've identified as one of your campaign goals a public option for Badger Care. Would that help preserve or expand health care in rural areas of Wisconsin?
Yes, the Badger Care as a public option. That means that the Badger Care, which is it's a Medicaid program, of course, and it's a very good insurance program, and it's based now on your income, but it could be offered to anyone as an option. So that would mean if you want to stay with your employer's insurance, yeah, good. But if you think that Badger Care would be a better way to get your health care, you would take that option. Well, this is a huge economic development program, because we have so many, especially in where I live in my assembly district, lots of small businesses. They have a huge problem providing insurance to their workers. If they could provide Badger Care to their workers, it would be a lower cost option, not only for the employer but also the employee. And we have many, not only in the 83rd Assembly District but throughout the state, we have many small farmers. They're all small businessmen. They could use this option as well, because they have huge problems getting coverage that they need.
As you campaign, are you hearing from hospitals and other medical providers that Wisconsin has such low Medicaid reimbursement rates that we might be at a tipping point in terms of hurting the quality of care provided by our MA, our Medicaid program?
Yes, that is definitely a problem that I recognize, that compensation rates are too low. We have, I keep coming back to where I live, in the 83rd, we have a great abundance of extremely effective and what I want to say, the medical system is very good. We have lots of care, and we can afford it, and it's very good for us. However, these workers who we depend on so much for our care, if they are not being properly compensated, then that's a conflict for them. I know, because I was a teacher, I was never in it for the money. And I don't think doctors and nurses and other workers expect to make a lot of money either, but they do have to be compensated so they can live in our fantastic communities.
As you campaign, have you heard about an issue from caregivers? AARP estimates that 578,000 Wisconsin residents are caregivers for family members or neighbors. So my question is, would you support laws or rules that require hospitals to recognize and work with family caregivers when someone they love is hospitalized? Have you heard about the issue?
It sounds very reasonable. I know my own mother has passed away a few years ago, and she needed care, and she was a widow and so on. So the family members were providing a lot of her care in cooperation with some really good partners. But I understand completely how that the exact relationship has to be improved, or it has to be thought about seriously. So I'm not exactly sure what the proposal is,
okay,
but I do recognize the problem.
A big issue in the next budget is going to be whether we need a new state prison. We have two that were built in the 1800s. Some Democratic candidates for governor said we could, over a few years, cut our prison population in half. Do we need a new state prison?
No, we don't need a new state prison. We incarcerate, I think, twice as many people as Minnesota does with the same...
2 or 3 times.
2 or 3 times with virtually the same demographics. So we're doing something wrong here with, I know that, for example, old law prisoners, they should have been out on parole decades ago, and they're still in our prisons. We can look at something like that. We can look at treatment instead of prison for people who have dependence, drug dependence and alcoholism, that kind of thing. So there are lots of good solutions that not only would solve our prison overcrowding and the cost of keeping people locked up, but also reinvigorate our communities, and we'd get these people back into their families where they can be productive citizens.
As a veteran teacher, the $100 million was set up for school safety grants. Is that enough, or do we need to change gun laws?
Well, we definitely need to change gun laws. We have a very high rate of people dying in Wisconsin and in our country from guns. As I said a couple times, I live in Muskego. We have Big Muskego Lake, which is a great place to hunt, and every morning, the first thing I hear in the morning are people enjoying gun sports, shooting waterfowl on the lake. And in the summer evenings, I can hear the sport shooters shooting skeet and so on at the local the gun ranges.
Yes.
So we know how to have a gun safety, but we definitely need universal background checks.
Okay.
I'm very certain of this, and I'm very certain that gun owners and NRA members would agree that when you're selling a gun, you want to know that gun will not be used in some dangerous and reckless way. And the other thing that we need to do about guns is to eliminate weapons of war, which have been responsible for such terrible events in our nation and even in Wisconsin. These multiple magazines, which have no purpose in sport. You could go to the gun range and shoot at targets there with your multiple magazines, but they have no place on the street or in our homes.
Your position on bills in the Capitol that would legalize recreational and medical marijuana?
Marijuana is a mood-altering drug, so we have some very good laws that protect us. We don't want people impaired when they're driving. We don't want people hurting themselves if they're operating heavy equipment and so on. So, but the choice whether to buy marijuana and use it recreational, it's a personal choice, and I'm in favor of that. And I'm very aware of the medical uses of marijuana and the wonderful effects that's had for certain seizures and other kinds of patients.
Differences between you and the incumbent you're challenging on November 6th, Tim?
Well, I think the biggest difference is my optimism about our state. You know, we can do these things. I mean, we were talking about Foxconn a little bit earlier. I don't think we knew we had $3 or $4.5 billion to spend on job creation, but we can. And I'm not advocating we spend $3 or $4 billion, but I'm saying with the money that we're spending, we can do a lot. But my opponent, I know, supports mining, which I'm absolutely against. I'm against. Well, especially if mining laws are written by the mining industry, but extractive industries like mining have to be watched very carefully, and we have to guard our environment. And my opponent is also taken votes to limit protections of our wetlands. And where I live, Muskego, we have 4 lakes. We have lots of wetlands. Muskego Lake is a great recreational asset because it's surrounded by wetlands that can be used by the sportsmen. So I'm very sensitive to the need to protect our environment, especially our water resources.
Okay, thank you. Jim Brownlow of Muskego is a Democratic candidate in the 83rd Assembly District. The election is November 6th. Jim, thanks for talking to WisconsinEye.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Campaign 2018 is sponsored by Wisconsin Hospital Association, Wisconsin Counties Association, Wisconsin Realtors Association, Marshfield Clinic Health System, AARP Wisconsin, and Campaign 2018 partner Milwaukee Journal Sentinel.